What's your favorite memory?
You mean in terms of pleasure or the most interesting, or?
You pick.
I think the thing that I remember most, but with sort of misgivings in a way, were and they're really misnamed, the so-called Platteville riots in the late 60s. That really is a misnomer, because they really were not riots.
Oh, what were
they? Well, they were student protests, and I remember that time vividly. I was that time faculty advisor, student senate.
Didn't it all start with a squirrel?
Well, there are many versions of that. I know the squirrel or dog or cat or whatever got in the transformer.
Blew all the lights
whatever,
in town. Yeah.
But those of us who were here will never forget that week. It was very exciting. I was advisor student senate, and I remember Dr. Alsvik that time asked me, do you remember this? Asked me to keep a ledger of our meetings, and we met, I still have it at home, 37 hours that week, student senate. We didn't really accomplish very much.
But you met.
We met a lot, yes.
For 37
yes,
hours.
and it was exciting. It was a very exciting time.
One of the first things that happened to him, at least I of course wasn't here, but it was in 1959 when John Kennedy came. Senator John Kennedy came in September 1959. He was gearing up for the presidential campaign in 1960. And he spoke at what was then Old Main. Kennedy was speaking, and Tom was on the sidewalk. He was a young professor, and he noticed this one young man out on the sidewalk handing out leaflets, okay? Probably, promoting Senator Kennedy, okay. Well, Tom stopped the guy from promoting or handing out leaflets because he said, you're on public property. And he made sure that that young man had to go across the street on, that young man was Teddy Kennedy. So, that was one of his famous stories. He loved it, that he had kicked Teddy Kennedy off the campus. So that was Tom. Tom would dress, he'd come in a cape sometimes, or in like a beret. Absolutely, very flamboyant. Not every day, but yeah, he wanted to be noticed. And one of the things he did here that he took extreme pride in as an emeriti was homecoming. He would drive Chancellor Marquis and Luann in the homecoming parade. And so he had this nice red convertible, and they rode in the back, and Tom drove, and he just loved it. Because he was, and then every now and then, of course, the photographer of the day would take a photograph of Tom in the homecoming with Luann and David. And he just loved being on the web page of the university that he was driving the chancellor. So that was Tom.
So at that time it was Crystal Capri, and it was like February, and you'd have a big ball and a dance and that sort of thing. And he knew I was going. I think it was my first senior year. And so he literally came over to the house, and he knew that, like Jerry says, we're country boys, a small town. And he made sure, my shoes were polished, my tie was on straight, I had my blazer with my Phi Sigma Chi patch on it, all looking good. And he did that with a couple other members of the fraternity as well, but he was that sort of person. He would take that time to do that. And another thing, our fraternity did always participate in homecoming floats. And you would be out there at night till 10:30, approaching homecoming weekend with the music going and building this float and finishing it up on Saturday morning before the parade began. Doc was there. He was there right with all of the fraternity members, taking a look and commenting and doing that several nights before the event and also on Saturday morning. And he was just another one of the guys, which, I say he was another one of the guys, yet he was the stopper. He was the person to sort of keep us in check, but in a very loving and nice way.
In my case, Doc Lundeen, after I graduated and started my career, would start to send me letters and say something about what the projects I was working on and how are you doing. It was like he was still making sure that I was growing up and I was making the right choices. And I think after many years after he passed, I reflected back on it. It was sad that he's gone, because I looked forward to that there was this support mechanism, and he really was interested in me, which meant he really did care along the way. And as George mentioned, is that we were young. We didn't appreciate that. We weren't mature enough, or we hadn't gone through the steps of life to realize that this person was really helping us out. The book that Doc Lundeen wrote, one Christmas he sent me a copy. And I opened it up and I thought, this is really nice. And then I opened it up and it was signed, not Tom Lundeen, Jerry, something about the project that I was working on. He said, Save Antarctica. I mean, it was one of those types of things. I mean, that was like getting something from your father. And he did follow up with us.
I had applied at 7 or 8 schools, and Marquette was one of them. And for some reason or other, Marquette only got 2 of the 3 or 3 of the 5 letters of recommendation. So they were wondering why they hadn't showed up, if I was a lazy person that didn't do it or whatever. And the head of the department at Marquette, Thomas Hatchie, called here and got a hold of our secretary, and she gave him Tom's number because he was one of the letters that got through. And I didn't find this out until probably a couple years later, but Hatchie called Tom Lundeen, told him that they only had the 2 letters, and Tom got on the phone, talked to Tom Hatchie, and while he was talking to Tom Hatchie, he stood in his doorway on the phone, which was right next to the elevator and the stairway for people coming in and out of the history department. And as they were going by, he grabbed every professor he could and put them on the phone to talk about me. And when he had one on the phone, he went down the hallway, found others. So that's how I got into grad school.